What's up guys, my name is Jake, and welcome to Abandoned, episode 63. The sparkling city of Las Vegas has always been known for its often over-the-top resorts. Las Vegas Boulevard is densely packed with incredible structures, all very much successful. But I've always wondered what happens when a resort doesn't do all that well, or perhaps never even got the chance to find out. Today I wanted to look at the ghost on the Las Vegas Strip, a towering structure seemingly so close to being finished, but in reality has been sitting there abandoned for over a decade. So join me as I seek out what happened to the never-opened Fontainebleau Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. This episode is brought to you by me and my brand new feature-length documentary, Closed for Storm. The release is finally here, coming to all major video-on-demand services July 6th. You can also pre-order my movie right now on iTunes. It all began with Turnberry Associates, a real estate development company owned by billionaire Donald Sofer. His company purchased a 21-acre parcel of land at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Elvis Presley Drive. The existing structure on the property was the Thunderbird Resort, which eventually closed in 1992 as the El Rancho. Turnberry had high ambitions for this land and soon demolished the existing structure. Their plan was to build a massive 2,000-room hotel and casino themed on the City of London, with a towering lodge building made to look like Big Ben. However, this coincided with the events of September 11th, 2001, and tourism took a big hit. The London resort was ultimately cancelled, and Turnberry moved on to other projects like purchasing the adjacent land to their existing Las Vegas property and building condos. Turnberry was also keeping busy with developing the residences at a luxury hotel in Miami Beach called the Fontainebleau. It was a hotel built in the mid-1950s and carries a lot of historical weight to it, even listed as a historical landmark and overall iconic hotel in South Florida. They saw Fontainebleau as a valuable name and potentially a valuable brand, which could see multiple iterations across America. So, in 2005, a private corporation was set up to manage new developments to the brand, co-owned by Turnberry Associates and managed by key industry executives. This, along with their previous land acquisitions, all pointed to a West Coast expansion. And sure enough, by May of that year, the Fontainebleau Las Vegas Hotel and Casino was officially announced. This project was even bigger than the original London-themed resort. Fontainebleau Las Vegas was nothing short of colossal. Across 3.4 million square feet, the resort would feature a casino, a convention center, a 3,200-seat performing arts center, a 300,000 square foot shopping district, 27 restaurants and bars, nightclubs, a 60,000 square foot spa, a 7-acre pool deck, and 3,889 rooms, made up of both hotel and condo units. In addition, the sprawling and high-tech resort would also feature brand new Apple iMacs in each room, replacing the traditional resort information booklets. With 63 floors, the Fontainebleau was set to become the tallest building on the Strip, and one with an enormous price tag. The cost to get the doors open for this mega hotel was set at around $3 billion. With construction financed, ground was broken in early 2007. The funding mainly came from loans worth billions of dollars from multiple big banks, all to see this resort through, now with an anticipated opening date of fall 2009. As construction went vertical, the global economy went the other way. And I bet you're thinking to yourself right about now, that taking on billions in bank loans, developing a tour-centered project, especially one that big, was a bad combination. And you're absolutely right. The 2008 recession has become a bit of a theme lately on my channel, so you'll know that having construction projects that are heavily leveraged off of loans during this time was extremely risky. But as the recession dried up trillions, Fontainebleau claimed that they were still financially sturdy and the construction continued on. Behind the scenes, however, they were in significant debt. Despite this and staying true to their word, construction did continue on, and as bankers sobbed on Wall Street, the 63-story tower topped off, becoming the tallest building on the Las Vegas Strip. However, while they seemed to be almost immune to the financial crisis, their luck on this big gamble was about to turn. By September of 2008, the collapse of the financial institution Lehman Brothers had put a gap in their retail portion of Fontainebleau's funding. Additionally, Moody's, a credit rating agency, had downgraded their loan, citing they had declining faith in the project due to decreased demand for gambling. As glass began to cover the tower, by December a condo preview center opened with apparently a lack of much interest, especially as other resorts in the area who were also selling condos were struggling. During this time, Fontainebleau Resorts also embarked on a billion-dollar renovation to their Miami hotel and marketing campaign to raise brand awareness. At this point, the Las Vegas resort still had the necessary funds to complete construction under the assumption that they would adequately sell enough condo units. But with a loss of confidence from the larger banks, they terminated an $800 million revolving loan with Fontainebleau. This prompted the resort to sue the group of lenders, filing a $3 billion lawsuit. They claimed that the banks failed to uphold their commitment even though they had received billions from the federal government's bailout. I can understand their point on that actually. However, it was later revealed by those banks that the developers had gone over budget and requested over $1 billion in debt forgiveness. So those banks decided that they were in violation of their loan agreements and pulled the plug on them. By this point, the resort was nearing 70% complete, with an opening date expected for October of 2009. Whether or not they were actually going to meet that deadline was sort of contingent on this loan. Construction was then dramatically reduced once another lender to the project pulled their money out of Fontainebleau. This resulted in a mass layoff to construction workers, and progress was then very slowly made. In addition to this, the developers caught wind that one of those big banks who pulled their money, Deutsche Bank, had, according to them, a conflict of interest as they were heavily invested in another resort being built on the Strip. An amendment to their original lawsuit was filed, now including this claim that Deutsche was essentially sabotaging the Fontainebleau project. These allegations were eventually dropped, however. So obviously things were going smoothly, and it really only got worse from here. This was because of a lawsuit filed, this time against Fontainebleau, from CCCS International, a construction consulting firm who had claimed a myriad of monetary negligence allegations on the part of these developers, and essentially poor decision-making that led to them going over budget and, quote, fraudulent billing practices. This lawsuit also revealed that the true cost to finish the complex would be around $3.5 billion, around $600 million more than the original expectation. It was also later revealed that internally, the developers had multiple budgets, one that they would call bank budget, and others that allegedly had the true cost as, quote, Jeff's budget, or, quote, real budget, which, in other words, is fraud. The Las Vegas Sun wrote a fantastic article about all the madness that was going on here and what that lawsuit alleged. So I've left a link in the description below if you want to go read it. With executives bailing and only around 250 construction workers left on payroll, the almost dormant project had reached its tipping point. With no money left from loans, Fontainebleau declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection with over $2 billion in debt. By the conclusion of that year, the pressure was on to get the loans flowing back to Fontainebleau, as Turnberry ended up suing them, which essentially was suing themselves. It gets very complicated during this time, but the main point was that they were trying to get extra loans, which they failed to do because the economy was still in turmoil. Also, they didn't exactly have the best track record thus far. Almost immediately after the bankruptcy, the judge had ordered the property to be sold as soon as possible. Companies such as Wynn and Penn toured the property. Ultimately, Penn and a rather infamous businessman got into a bidding war, and the latter eventually won, paying $148 million for the unfinished resort. That businessman being Carl Icahn. And if that name sounds familiar to you, that's because that was the man who essentially ran TWA into the ground. He took possession in April of 2010 and stated that he would wait for the economy to recover before construction would resume to finish the hotel. An estimated $1.5 billion would still need to be invested to get the project across the finish line. However, Icahn's intentions weren't exactly clear, as by the end of the year, he sold off all of the interior fittings intended to go inside Fontainebleau. This was later confirmed by Time, as over the next few years, nothing was announced. The massive, unfinished building continued to sit abandoned right along the busy Las Vegas boulevard. The barren landscapes to the north of the property revealed how far it had to go. The rusting scaffolding still in place from construction was still visible from the sidewalks, as was the towering steel beams of the lower levels of the structure. The project was far enough along to where you could actually make out what the general spaces were going to be like, yet ones that were never covered. That was apart from the drywall and siding that were almost finished, yet stuck in a limbo state. So close to being done. The tower itself too was in somewhat of a completed state, with the enormous facade covered by glass, only broken by a few panes that shattered or fell off. It really does look like a decaying ghost structure. On the opposite side of the tower, a massive portion of the structure spanning the entire height was entirely exposed. This was for the crane and service elevators that were still in place well into 2014. Later in that year, it was removed, and adhering to the city's request to improve the sightlines of the abandoned Fontainebleau, Icon paid to have the facades covered with tarps and paint. Of course, a minor fix to a much, much larger issue. Around this time, that lawsuit from 2009 was finally settled. Remember that $3 billion lawsuit Fontainebleau filed against the larger banks? Well, a judge ultimately came back and sided with the banks. Anyways, back in Las Vegas, it appeared that the skepticism of Carl Icahn's true intentions to restore the property were well-founded, as in 2015, he put the property up for sale at $650 million. Ultimately, it was sold in August of 2017 by two private investment firms for $600 million. Remember, Carl Icahn bought it for around $150 million just 7 years prior. So yeah, he probably made over $400 million on this abandoned property. Now, these new owners purchased the resort fully knowing that it would take another $1.5 billion to get it done. Their plan was to actually do something with the property and secured the loans from multiple big banks, including, oh look at that, Deutsches. They took on new partners and began actively moving forward with developing plans. In February, a partnership with Marriott was announced along with a new name for the resort, the Drew Las Vegas. This reimagining would feature a JW Marriott and an ultra-luxury Edition hotel on the top floors. Existing portions of the hotel were promised to be redesigned, and a new opening date was set for 2020. This was later postponed to 2022 by the project leader and real estate investor Stephen Witkoff. He claimed that more time was needed for designing, and to be fair, the concept art released for the new hotel shows a radical design change from the original 2007 rendering. By January of 2020, Witkoff announced that they were very close to securing a $2 billion loan needed for construction, which soon after would get the momentum going. Finally, it seemed as though this resort would have a bright future after all. But just like the 2008 crisis, I'm sure you're probably assuming what global catastrophe is coming next. Of course, by March 2020, the pandemic had forced construction to stop and really just derailed the whole project. You're gonna have deja vu with this. A few months later, the developers were facing accusations from a construction firm claiming they performed work that was unpaid, and by June, they were the recipients of a lawsuit filed by former executives at the Drew, claiming they were not being paid for what their contracts called for after being laid off. Now, this lasted through the rest of 2020 with very little work actually made on the Drew. But if this story wasn't tedious and weird enough, in February of 2021, the property was once again sold, this time to Jeffrey Sofer, the son of Donald Sofer, who started this whole thing. It's part of his new company, now named Fontainebleau Development, and this purchase was a joint venture between that company and Koch Industries. That's right, Fontainebleau is back. While the purchase price was not disclosed, it could be assumed that they bought it at market value, which was around the same price that the last owners bought it for. But still, the project needs well over $1 billion to get it finished. It seems that's why they partnered with Koch, America's largest private company, and despite whatever you may think of them, they certainly have deep pockets. Now, at the time of making this video, it really isn't clear on what Fontainebleau Developments plans to do with the Drew. They haven't announced an opening date, or even if they plan on changing the name back to Fontainebleau. The only thing we do know is that Marriott will stay on as their hotel partner. However, since this is an entirely new company coming in, they likely need to completely redesign the interiors again, which of course takes time. I think in the end, this start has the most promising future considering they are essentially backed by a Goliath in private money. There is certainly a lot of pressure from the city and state to get this project finished, but really the public reaction has been mixed at best. Some might even say that the building as it stands now looks sorta dated, and that's probably because it's a design from the early 2000s. Will this monster resort even make enough money to become economically viable? I think that's one of the many issues Fontainebleau Developments are going to have to overcome, and who knows how long that will take. While that happens, the tower will continue to sit abandoned, unfinished, and decaying on the north end of the strip. Certainly not helping the North End's reputation. This project began with so much hype and ambition to create the tallest and one of the largest resort complexes in the entire country. Billions of dollars being funneled into what was supposed to be the next big hotel brand. But poor financial dealings and bad timing killed their momentum and ultimately put everything to waste. Well, for now. In the end, Fontainebleau Las Vegas has kinda come full circle, but with little confidence from the public that anything will really happen. As it stands now, it's quite possibly the largest physical reminder of the 2008 recession. So it's been almost 2.5 years since I began working on my first feature documentary. If you don't already know, I wanted to make a film chronicling the rise and fall of the now infamous theme park, Six Flags New Orleans. It turned out to be way more tedious than I had ever prepared for, but we also got to tell such an interesting story and discuss issues I had never even considered. In the end, I think myself and the incredible team who worked tirelessly on the project created something really special. I'm incredibly excited to finally say that Closed for Storm will be released on July 6th across all major video-on-demand services. This includes iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, YouTube Movies, and many, many more. Pretty much every major platform you can think of. You can also pre-order the film right now on iTunes, and if you do so, it will actually help the film out when it launches on that platform. I also just want to say thank you so much for those of you who have been patiently waiting for this documentary to come out. I know its release has been way slower than I thought, but we've finally reached the finish line, so thank you so much for sticking with me on it. Please go watch Closed for Storm when it comes out on July 6th. My name is Jake, enjoy the movie, and thank you very much for watching.
Yes, Johnny, maybe you've been drinking on the job, huh? What's going on with